Listen carefully. Your life is not collapsing because you lack talent. It is collapsing because your mind has been trained to chase noise, comfort, distraction, and approval. Mental toughness is not loud. Discipline is not glamorous. Real power is built in silence, in repetition, in the private decisions nobody claps for. This is your quiet revolution, a war against inner weakness, scattered thinking, and emotional chaos. You do not need more motivation. You need command. And by the end of this book, you will understand one truth. If you can rule yourself in silence, you can win anywhere. Chapter 1. Kill the noise before it kills your future. Most people are not losing because life is too hard. They are losing because their minds are too crowded. That is the truth. They wake up and reach for noise. They sleep with noise. They eat with noise. They think with noise. Music, notifications, opinions, arguments, videos, news, messages, trends, reactions. Everybody talking. Nobody thinking. Everybody consuming. Nobody commanding. And then they wonder why they feel weak. They wonder why they cannot focus. They wonder why they start and stop. They wonder why they feel mentally tired before the day even begins. Here is why. Noise steals command. Say it again. Noise steals command. When your mind is full of other people's urgency, you lose connection with your own priorities. When your attention is constantly interrupted, your judgment gets weaker. When every empty moment is filled, your inner voice gets buried. And when your inner voice gets buried, your life gets led by impulse, not intention. That is how people destroy their future. Not in one dramatic moment. In fragments. In small leaks. In constant distraction. You have a choice. You can keep letting the world into your head every second of the day. Or you can close the gate and take your mind back. That's the key. This chapter is not just about silence. It is about command. It is about refusing to let chaos live rent-free in your nervous system. It is about understanding that mental toughness begins when you stop treating your attention like it is cheap. Your attention is not cheap. It is your life. Where attention goes, identity follows. Where identity goes, behavior follows. And where behavior goes, your future follows. So if your attention is broken, your future gets broken first. That is why noise is not harmless. It is theft. Noise steals command. Now understand this clearly. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a weapon. Weak people are afraid of silence because silence removes distraction. It removes performance. It removes escape. It forces them to sit with themselves. And many people do not want to meet themselves without background entertainment. That is the real crisis. Not loneliness. Not boredom. Avoidance. People are avoiding themselves all day long. They cannot stand in line without checking a screen. They cannot walk without headphones. They cannot work without 10 tabs open. They cannot feel one uncomfortable emotion without running to stimulation. And then they call this normal. It may be common. It is not normal. A quiet mind is a dangerous mind. Why? Because the quiet mind sees clearly. The quiet mind notices patterns. The quiet mind can separate what matters from what merely shouts the loudest. The quiet mind chooses faster because it is not dragged in 10 directions at once. The quiet mind resists manipulation because it is not desperate for instant relief. That is power. Real power is not loud. Real power is stable. Real power does not need to panic, explain, or react to every little thing. Real power pauses. Real power measures. Real power moves when movement is useful. A quiet mind is a dangerous mind. Look at the person who ruins a career opportunity because they cannot stop oversharing. They are nervous, so they talk too much. They try to impress. They try to fill the silence. They reveal insecurity instead of strength. They confuse expression with value. And the room feels it. Look at the person who receives criticism and instantly explodes. Not because the criticism destroyed them, but because they had no internal space between the trigger and the reaction. No silence. No pause. No command. Look at the person who says they want to build a business, get in shape, write a book, lead a family, or master a craft, but spend 6 hours a day consuming other people's lives. Scrolling. Watching. Commenting. Comparing. Reacting. They are not lazy in the obvious sense. They are mentally occupied. Their future is being suffocated by constant input. You have a choice. You can consume all day and wonder why you feel powerless. Or you can create space and become dangerous. It's not about information. It's about discipline. Read that again in your mind. It's not about information. It's about discipline. Most people do not need more podcasts, more advice, more motivational clips, more opinions, more commentary. They need fewer interruptions. They need fewer emotional hooks. They need fewer open loops. They need fewer voices inside their head. Because breakthroughs do not begin with addition. They begin with subtraction. Less talking. Less scrolling. Less explaining. Less reacting. Less checking. Less proving. Less exposure to things that do not deserve access to your nervous system. Cut the noise. Reclaim the self. That is not poetry. That is instruction. Here is what transformation looks like in practice. First, stop starting your day with intrusion. Do not wake up and immediately surrender your mind to messages, headlines, notifications, and social feeds. That is like opening your front door at dawn and letting strangers run into your house shouting demands. Start your day with your own mind first. Sit up. Breathe. Think. Write. Move. Pray. Train. Plan. But do not consume before you command. That's the key. Second, create periods of intentional silence every day. No phone. No music. No talking. No content. Just silence. At first it will feel uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is showing you how dependent you have become on stimulation. Stay there. Let the mind twitch. Let it complain. Let it detox. You are not dying. You are withdrawing from noise. Chosen silence builds unshakable clarity. Third, stop explaining yourself so much. This is where many people bleed energy. They narrate every plan, defend every choice, justify every boundary, announce every intention. Why? Because they want approval before action. They want emotional support before responsibility. You don't need their permission. If the plan matters, work it. If the boundary matters, hold it. If the goal matters, protect it. Excessive explanation is a symptom of internal doubt. Silence is often a sign of decision. A quiet mind is a dangerous mind. Fourth, reduce reactive speech. Not every opinion deserves your reply. Not every insult deserves your defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Not every moment requires expression. Some of your greatest power will come from what you choose not to say. Because every reaction costs energy. And every unnecessary reaction trains weakness. You have a choice. You can keep spending your life reacting. Or you can start investing your life directing. Fifth, clean your environment. Your surroundings either support command or support chaos. A cluttered room. Constant background television. Random alerts. Endless tabs. Disorder on every surface. All of it sends a message to the brain. Stay scattered. Stay restless. Stay fragmented. Do not underestimate this. External noise becomes internal noise very quickly. Order your space so you can order your mind. It's not about aesthetics. It's about discipline. Sixth, audit the voices you allow into your head. Some people are noisy even when they are not speaking. Their energy is noisy. Their drama is noisy. Their insecurity is noisy. Their constant need for attention is noisy. If every conversation with someone leaves you more confused, reactive, doubtful, or drained, that is not connection. That is contamination. Protect your mind. Not everyone deserves access. Not every voice deserves weight. Noise steals command. And the cost is always higher than people admit. A distracted mind misses opportunities. A reactive mind creates conflict. A crowded mind cannot hear intuition. A noisy life produces shallow decisions. And shallow decisions create painful consequences. This is how futures get destroyed. Not only by bad intentions, by bad conditions, by a mind that never gets to recover its own authority. That is why silence is revolutionary. When you sit in silence, you begin to notice what has been controlling you. Your cravings, your fears, your mental loops, your need for stimulation, your need to be seen, your need to escape. And once you notice it, you can confront it. That is where toughness begins. Not when life gets easier. When you get clearer. Cut the noise, reclaim the self. That line must become a standard. When the day feels chaotic, cut the noise. When your emotions feel scattered, cut the noise. When you feel the urge to explain, defend, react, scroll, consume, or escape, cut the noise. Then reclaim the self. Come back to your breath. Come back to your body. Come back to your values. Come back to the task. Come back to command. You do not need more noise to fix your life. You need more silence that tells the truth. Because once the noise fades, you can finally see the real enemy. Not the world. Not your circumstances. Your own undisciplined attention. And that is good news. Because if attention is the problem, discipline is the answer. You have a choice. You can keep living as an open door, letting everything enter your mind and steal your power. Or you can become guarded, intentional, quiet, sharp. That's the key. Mental toughness begins with what you refuse to let in. Silence is your first weapon. Subtraction is your first strategy. Command is your first victory. Kill the noise before it kills your future. Because the moment you stop feeding chaos is the moment you begin building strength. The quiet revolution starts here, with one simple act of rebellion. You cut the noise, and you take yourself back. You reclaimed your attention. Now let's go deeper. Because once the noise is gone, another weakness gets exposed, the need to be seen while you are still unfinished. Chapter 2. Stop announcing the life you haven't built. One of the fastest ways to stay weak is to speak too early, to declare too much, to perform before you have produced, to talk like the work is done when the work has barely begun. That habit destroys people. Not always in public, usually in private. Because the moment you announce a goal, your ego starts collecting a reward your discipline has not earned. People nod. People praise. People say, "That's amazing." People tell you how proud they are. And suddenly your brain feels progress without requiring proof. That is dangerous. Very dangerous. Because false progress is one of the most seductive forms of self-deception. You have a choice. You can chase the emotional high of being seen trying. Or you can endure the silence of actually becoming. That's the key. Do not announce. Accumulate. Say it again. Do not announce. Accumulate. Weak people love the announcement because it creates an identity without demanding a result. They say they are starting a business. They say they are getting disciplined. They say they are changing their body. They say they are cutting distractions. They say they are becoming serious. They say they are entering a new era. And then what happens? Nothing. Because the statement gave them the feeling they should have gotten from the process. That is why so many people talk in circles. They are addicted to the image of transformation, not the burden of transformation. It's not about expression, it's about execution. That is the truth. Read it again in your mind. It's not about expression, it's about execution. The person who keeps posting about discipline is often the least disciplined person in the room. The person who keeps talking about building is often avoiding the building. The person who keeps announcing plans is often using language to cover a lack of labor. That does not mean every spoken goal is fake. It means every spoken goal is at risk. Because words can become a substitute for work. And once that happens, your life becomes theater. You start performing ambition instead of practicing it. You start curating the image of a stronger person instead of becoming one. You start living in public anticipation while your private habits remain weak, scattered, and unchanged. That is the trap. The loud promise is the enemy of the quiet result. Most people do not realize how deeply this pattern controls them. They say, "This year is different." They announce a new routine on Monday. They post the workout. They tell friends about the diet. They reveal the business idea. They describe the future version of themselves in perfect detail. And for a moment, it feels real. But when the applause fades, so does the energy. Because they built momentum on attention, not conviction. And attention is unstable. That's the key. Anything built on attention collapses when attention disappears. Anything built on conviction survives in silence. Look at the person who says they are getting in shape. They buy the clothes first. They post the first workout. They talk about the new identity. They make speeches about discipline. But when soreness comes, when boredom comes, when results are slow, when nobody is watching, they fade. Why? Because they were feeding off visibility. Look at the person who says they are starting a business. They talk about freedom. They talk about vision. They talk about impact. They talk about the future empire. But they have no system, no consistency, no patience, no tolerance for the invisible stage where nothing looks impressive. They wanted to be known as a builder more than they wanted to build. Look at the person who keeps promising personal growth. Every month a new declaration. Every month a new reinvention. Every month a new public reset. But the same emotional habits. The same excuses. The same inconsistency. The same need to be witnessed changing instead of quietly changing. You have a choice. You can keep narrating your potential. Or you can start protecting it. Do not announce. Accumulate. That means reps. That means hours. That means evidence. That means skill stacked on skill, day after day, with no immediate reward. That means letting the identity form in private before you ever try to display it in public. That is how serious people move. They do not rush to be seen. They rush to become difficult to deny. The loud promise is the enemy of the quiet result. Never forget that. Because every time you speak too soon, you leak energy. You invite opinions before you have built resilience. You expose something fragile to people who may not understand it, support it, or respect it. And worst of all, you tempt yourself into confusing intention with achievement. You don't need their permission. You do not need approval to start. You do not need recognition to continue. You do not need an audience to validate effort. You do not need public pressure to do private work. If your discipline requires witnesses, it is not yet discipline. It is dependency. It's not about visibility, It's about stability. That is the correction. And stability is built in the dark. So what should the listener do? First, stop announcing new standards before they are installed. Do not tell people about the routine you just started. Live it first. Do not explain the boundary you are trying to grow into. Hold it first. Do not brag about the business, the body, the reading habit, the meditation habit, the savings plan, the emotional control. Build proof first. The standard is simple. If it is still fragile, keep it private. If it still depends on motivation, keep it private. If one bad week can destroy it, keep it private. Move in silence. Let proof arrive later. Second, replace public declarations with private tracking. This is where adults separate from performers. You do not need to tell the world what you intend to do. You need a system that tells you whether you did it. A notebook, a checklist, a calendar, a training log, a work ledger. Something real, something measurable, something cold. Not feelings, not intentions, not identity statements. Results. That's the key. Track behavior, not fantasy. If you say you are becoming disciplined, show it in completed sessions, finished tasks, days of restraint, hours of focus, promises kept. That is how self-respect is built. Not through slogans. Through receipts. Third, stop using conversation as a replacement for courage. A lot of people talk because action scares them. Talking feels safe. Talking creates the illusion of movement. Talking gives them a temporary sense of control over a future they have not earned. But the real work is quiet. The real work is repetitive. The real work is often boring. The real work does not care how inspired you sound. It only responds to what you repeat. What you repeat, you become. That is why private labor matters so much. Because it removes performance from the equation. No applause. No identity theater. No social reward. Just you and the standard. Just you and the promise. Just you and the proof. That is where character is built. Fourth, let people misunderstand you during the building phase. This is one of the hardest disciplines. You start pulling back. You become more private. You stop explaining every move. You say less. You disappear a little. And now people project. They assume you quit. They assume you lost direction. They assume you are doing nothing. Let them. You have a choice. You can waste energy correcting every false assumption. Or you can use that energy to keep building. You don't need their permission. In fact, some of your strongest growth will happen when nobody believes in the version of you that is coming. That pressure is useful. That doubt is training. That invisibility protects the process from contamination. Move in silence. Let proof arrive later. That phrase is not passive. It is strategic. It means you stop trying to control the narrative and start controlling the work. It means you stop asking to be taken seriously and become someone serious people recognize immediately. It means you let time become your witness. Because results speak a language excuses cannot survive. When the body changes, people see it. When the business grows, people feel it. When your standards sharpen, people notice it. When your emotions stabilize, people respect it. When your attention gets cleaner, your presence gets heavier. You do not have to announce power. Power announces itself through consequence. That is real authority. And there is another reason silence matters. It protects momentum. Every time you speak a goal too early, you risk inviting friction from people who are weaker, more fearful, more cynical, or more addicted to comfort than you are. They may laugh. They may question. They may advise you into mediocrity. They may bring their insecurity into your unfinished process. Why give them access? Why expose the seed before it has roots? Protect it, build it, strengthen it, then reveal it when it no longer depends on being understood. That's the key. The strongest move is not to convince people you are changing. The strongest move is to change so thoroughly that explanation becomes unnecessary. Do not announce. Accumulate. Accumulate discipline. Accumulate skill. Accumulate evidence. Accumulate restraint. Accumulate work ethic. Accumulate private wins. Accumulate days where you kept the promise with nobody watching. That is how a new identity is built. Quietly, brutally, repeatedly. And when the time comes, let the results speak with brutal clarity. Let the body speak. Let the bank account speak. Let the calmness speak. Let the consistency speak. Let the standards speak. Let the life speak. The loud promise is the enemy of the quiet result. So kill the promise if it exists only to impress. Kill the performance if it exists only to be seen. Kill the habit of talking yourself into feeling accomplished before you have done the work. This book is about a quiet revolution. And revolutions are not won through announcements. They are won through disciplined accumulation. Brick by brick. Day by day. In silence. Move in silence. Let proof arrive later. That is how you stop performing strength and start possessing it. That is how you reclaim integrity between what you say and what you do. And that is how the quiet revolution moves from fantasy into fact. You stopped announcing. Now you must face an even harder test, acting when your emotions refuse to cooperate. Chapter 3. Discipline begins where mood ends. Most people do not have a discipline problem. They have a mood problem. They believe they need to feel right before they do right. They believe motivation must arrive before action begins. They believe the day must feel smooth, the energy must feel high, the mind must feel clear, the emotions must feel cooperative. That belief keeps them weak. Because moods change. They rise. They fall. They lie. They distort. They disappear. And if your standards rise and fall with your emotions, then you do not have standards. You have preferences. That is the line. And you need to see it clearly. Mood is weak. Method is power. Say it again. Mood is weak. Method is power. The person who lives by mood will always be inconsistent. They will work hard when excited and disappear when bored. They will train when inspired and stop when it hurts. They will be kind when calm and reckless when irritated. They will dream loudly and execute poorly. Why? Because they handed authority to emotion. And emotion was never built to lead. Emotion is feedback, not command. You have a choice. You can let temporary feelings decide permanent outcomes. Or you can build a method that works whether you feel like it or not. That's the key. This chapter is where excuses lose their hiding place. Because most excuses sound emotional, not logical. I'm just not feeling it today. I need the right mindset first. I'll start when I have more energy. This week has been off. I want to do it well, and right now I'm not in the right space. All of that sounds reasonable. All of it can destroy a life. Not because rest is wrong. Not because emotions do not matter. But because too many people use feelings as permission slips for inconsistency. It's not about feeling, it's about follow-through. That is the correction. Mentally tough people do not negotiate with every emotion that passes through them. They notice it. They name it. But they do not kneel to it. They are tired. They work anyway. They are bored. They continue anyway. They are uncertain. They move anyway. They are irritated. They stay composed anyway. That is strength, not the absence of emotion. Authority over emotion. You do not wait to feel ready. You become ready by moving. That sentence matters, because readiness is often created after action begins, not before. The body does not want to train. Then it warms up, and suddenly it can. The mind does not want to work. Then it starts, and suddenly it focuses. The conversation feels uncomfortable. Then you lean in, tell the truth, and suddenly clarity appears. The room feels heavy. The day feels off. Your energy feels low. Fine. Begin anyway. Because motion changes state. Action changes chemistry. Action interrupts self-pity. Action builds evidence. And evidence is stronger than emotion. You do not wait to feel ready. You become ready by moving. Look at the person who says they want a stronger body, but only trains when the energy feels high. That person is not building strength. They are building dependence on mood. So when stress hits, when sleep is short, when weather changes, when soreness appears, the habit collapses. Look at the person who says they want a better career, but only works deeply when inspiration visits. They have confused creativity with discipline. Real professionals do not wait for the perfect internal weather. They sit down. They begin. They respect the schedule more than the feeling. Look at the person who says they want peace, but loses control the second frustration appears. They are calm only when life is convenient. That is not peace. That is comfort. Peace is proven when pressure arrives. You have a choice. You can be stable only when conditions are easy. Or you can become stable because your principles are stronger than your moods. That's the key. Mood is weak. Method is power. So what is method? Method is the pre-decided standard. Method is what you do on the days you do not feel powerful. Method is the routine that removes debate. Method is the instruction that saves you from your own emotional fluctuations. Wake up. Move your body. Do the work block. Eat with intention. Hold the boundary. Keep the promise. Go to bed on time. Simple. Not easy, but simple. And that simplicity is what saves you. Because when the mind gets emotional, complexity becomes an escape route. Method closes the escape routes. It tells you what to do before your emotions can make a case for weakness. That is why disciplined people often look calm. They are not asking themselves every hour what they feel like doing. They already decided what matters. They already chose the standard. They already removed negotiation. Decision once. Execute often. That's the key. Now hear this clearly. Discipline is not punishment. Weak people hear the word discipline and imagine restriction, misery, pressure, harshness. They think discipline means losing freedom. No. Undisciplined people are the least free people in the world. They are controlled by appetite, controlled by fatigue, controlled by impulse, controlled by distraction, controlled by the emotional temperature of the moment. That is not freedom. That is internal slavery. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is identity construction. Every time you act without emotional permission, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you keep the promise while tired, you become more trustworthy to yourself. Every time you stay calm while irritated, you become more dangerous. Every time you finish the work while uninspired, you become harder to break. Every time you refuse to bow to the mood, you build command. When mood quits, discipline takes command. Say it again. When mood quits, discipline takes command. This is where mental toughness is built. Not in the easy days. In the ordinary hard days. In the gray mornings. In the boring afternoons. In the moments when nobody is watching and nothing feels rewarding yet. That is where the identity is forged. Anyone can act with enthusiasm. Can you act with resistance? Anyone can move with applause. Can you move in silence? Anyone can stay focused when life feels exciting. Can you stay focused when life feels repetitive? That is the test. And that is why repetitive effort matters so much. The mind wants novelty. Discipline wants consistency. The ego wants intensity. Discipline wants repetition. The weak self wants emotional drama. The strong self wants a system. It's not about intensity, it's about continuity. That is how lives change. Not through one heroic day. Through one standard repeated long enough to become identity. So here is the behavioral instruction. First, stop asking yourself, "Do I feel like it?" That question is poison for growth. Replace it with, "What did I say I would do?" That question builds adults. Second, lower the emotional drama around effort. You do not need a speech before every workout. You do not need a perfect mood before every work session. You do not need inspiration to make a phone call, clean your space, keep your boundary, write the page, save the money, or go to sleep on time. Just begin. You do not need their permission. Not from your friends. Not from your family. Not from your past identity. And certainly not from your current mood. Third, use minimum execution on bad days. This matters. Some people hear discipline and think it means all or nothing. So if they cannot do the perfect version, they do nothing. That is still mood-based living. No. On bad days, shorten the session if needed. Reduce the volume if needed. Simplify the task if needed. But keep the pattern alive. 10 minutes of training beats 0. 1 page beats 0. A controlled response beats an emotional explosion. A smaller disciplined action still protects identity. That's the key. You are not preserving performance. You are preserving trust. Fourth, stop romanticizing rest that is actually avoidance. Real rest restores you for duty. Fake rest helps you escape duty. Learn the difference. If you rest and return stronger, good. If you rest and keep postponing, you are not recovering. You are retreating. You have a choice. You can keep calling avoidance self-care. Or you can tell the truth and rebuild your standard. Fifth, practice emotional non-negotiation in small moments. Get up when the alarm rings. Put the phone down when the urge hits. Finish the task before checking messages. Pause before reacting. Take the walk. Drink the water. Keep the word. These moments look small. They are not small. They are rehearsals for command. And command is the whole game. Because the person who cannot govern small impulses will not govern big outcomes. Mood is weak. Method is power. You do not wait to feel ready. You become ready by moving. When mood quits, discipline takes command. Let those lines become part of your operating system. Use them when you are tired. Use them when you are bored. Use them when you are tempted to delay. Use them when your emotions start making arguments for weakness. You are not trying to become emotionless. You are trying to become unruled. That is different. That is mature strength. That is the quiet revolution. Not screaming motivation. Not dramatic promises. Quiet command in the presence of discomfort. You do the work anyway. You hold the line anyway. You keep the promise anyway. That is how you become harder to distract and harder to defeat. Because once you stop waiting for mood, you stop waiting for life to feel easy before you become who you said you would be. And that is when real discipline begins to look like power. You learn to move without emotional permission. Now you must learn where that strength is forged most brutally. In the moments when nobody is there to distract you from yourself. Chapter 4. Make solitude your training ground. Most people are not afraid of being alone. They are afraid of what rises when the noise disappears. They are afraid of their own thoughts, afraid of the unresolved, afraid of the insecurity, afraid of the emptiness they have been covering with stimulation, conversation, attention, and movement. That is why they keep running. From screen to screen, from person to person, from text to text, from distraction to distraction, always filling space, always avoiding stillness, always escaping the one place where real strength can be built. If you fear solitude, you fear yourself. Say it again. If you fear solitude, you fear yourself. That line is not an insult. It is a diagnosis. Because the person who cannot be alone will always be owned by something outside of them. Owned by attention. Owned by approval. Owned by social noise. Owned by the need to be contacted, included, noticed, desired, entertained, validated. That is not freedom. That is dependence. You have a choice. You can keep using the world to distract you from yourself. Or you can use solitude to build yourself. That's the key. This chapter is where loneliness gets redefined. Because solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Loneliness says, I am empty because nobody is here. Solitude says, I am training because nobody is here. Loneliness begs for relief. Solitude builds command. Weak people confuse the two, because they have never learned how to be with themselves without collapsing into discomfort. So they fill every empty space. Music in the car. Videos during meals. Podcasts during walks. Texting during pauses. Noise before sleep. Noise after waking. Constant contact. Constant entertainment. Constant escape. Why? Because silence exposes insecurity. Silence reveals whether you actually like the person you are when nobody is watching. And that is a hard meeting for many people. If you fear solitude, you fear yourself. Look at the person who cannot sit in a room without grabbing the phone after 30 seconds. That is not a harmless habit. That is evidence. Evidence that stillness feels threatening. Evidence that inner life feels underdeveloped. Evidence that self-contact has become uncomfortable. Look at the person who chases attention every night because being home alone feels unbearable. They do not need more company. They need more internal stability. Look at the person who keeps gossiping, texting, posting, and checking because silence forces them to feel what they have been avoiding. The issue is not social behavior. The issue is self-avoidance. It's not about loneliness, it's about discipline. That is the correction. Mentally tough people do not run from private time. They use it. They reflect. They reset. They plan. They sharpen. They review their behavior. They confront their thoughts. They listen to the truth without needing it softened by entertainment. Alone is where you train the mind to obey. That phrase matters. Because when you are alone, there is no audience to impress. No social pressure to perform. No external structure forcing you to hold yourself together. It is just you and your standard. That is why solitude is such an honest training ground. You find out whether your discipline is real. You find out whether your attention is yours. You find out whether your peace is genuine or just borrowed from the presence of others. You find out whether you can direct your own mind without outside stimulation acting like a leash. That's the key. Anyone can look composed when the room is watching. Can you stay composed when nobody is around? Anyone can feel strong in conversation. Can you feel strong in silence? Anyone can talk about growth in public. Can you sit alone long enough to actually grow? Alone is where you train the mind to obey. That means private time must stop being treated like a void. It must be treated like conditioning, like training, like rehearsal for self-command. So what should you do? First, stop treating every empty moment as a problem that needs to be filled. This is one of the biggest behavioral shifts in the entire book. When there is space, keep some of it empty. Do not instantly reach for content. Do not automatically chase conversation. Do not panic when nothing is happening. Stay there. Let the silence do its work. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is information. It is showing you where dependency lies. Sit with it. Breathe through it. Observe it. Do not run. You have a choice. You can keep escaping discomfort and remain ruled by it. Or you can endure discomfort and become larger than it. That's the key. Second, create deliberate solitude in your schedule. Not accidental isolation. Intentional solitude. A walk without your phone. A meal without content. A morning without messages. A journal session without interruption. Time in a room with no music, no scrolling, no talking, no escape.
Why?
Because if you do not schedule solitude, distraction will schedule itself. And distraction is always happy to occupy your life. Protect the time. Guard it. Use it. Solitude is not a cage. It is a forge. A forge is where raw material gets strengthened by heat, pressure, and shaping. That is exactly what solitude does to character. It exposes weakness. Then it gives you a chance to strengthen it. Third, stop measuring your worth by how many people want access to you. This is where many people lose themselves. They think being needed means being valuable. They think constant social contact means they matter. They think attention is proof of significance.
No.
Attention is cheap. Access is common. Presence is not the same as respect. And popularity is not the same as peace. You don't need their permission to enjoy your own company. You do not need to apologize for privacy. You do not need to explain why you are becoming less available to noise. You do not need to perform sociability just to avoid being misunderstood. Some of your strongest growth will happen when you stop fearing distance and start using it well. Fourth, use solitude for self-examination, not self-pity. This is critical. Some people get alone and spiral. They replay pain. They magnify problems. They sink into vague sadness. That is not training. That is drifting. Solitude must have direction. Ask real questions. What have I been avoiding? Where am I undisciplined? What keeps triggering me? What pattern keeps repeating? What standard have I been lowering? What needs to stop immediately? What needs to begin today? That is how solitude becomes useful. It's not about isolation, it's about inspection. That is the correction. Fifth, practice doing hard things alone. Train alone sometimes. Study alone sometimes. Sit with discomfort alone. Solve problems without instantly asking everyone else what they think. This builds internal authority. This teaches the mind that support is valuable, but dependence is dangerous. Because if you need constant reassurance to function, you will always be easy to control. Alone is where you train the mind to obey. And obedience here does not mean suppression. It means direction. It means you decide where attention goes. You decide what thoughts get fed. You decide whether the moment becomes weakness or strength. That is real maturity. Look at the strongest people you know. Not the loudest. Not the most social. The strongest. There is almost always a private life behind that strength. A disciplined relationship with solitude. Time spent thinking, refining, reflecting, recalibrating. They do not fear being alone because they have built something there. They have built familiarity with themselves. They have built trust with themselves. They have built order inside themselves. That is why they are hard to shake. Because they are not dependent on constant contact to feel stable. Solitude is not a cage. It is a forge. Remember that when the room gets quiet. Remember that when people do not text back. Remember that when you spend a Friday night building instead of performing. Remember that when you feel the urge to escape into noise. Stay in the forge. Let it strengthen you. Let it expose what still needs work. Let it show you whether your self-respect is real or borrowed. Because self-respect is not built by being admired. It is built by being honest with yourself in private and still choosing the higher standard. That is the whole game. Private integrity. Private order. Private command. That is what turns solitude into power. You have a choice. You can keep treating private time like something to survive. Or you can start treating it like the place where your next level is built. If you fear solitude, you fear yourself. But once you stop fearing yourself, solitude becomes one of the greatest advantages you have. It becomes the room where your thoughts get cleaner, your standards get sharper, your emotions get quieter, and your identity gets stronger. That is the quiet revolution. Not needing noise, company, or constant stimulation to remain solid. You learned how to stand alone. Now you must learn how to become stronger through discomfort itself. Chapter 5. Suffer small on purpose so life can't break you. Most people are not broken by major hardship first. They are broken by the absence of hardship. They become soft in comfort, dependent on ease, fragile in convenience. They build a life where every impulse is obeyed, every craving is fed, every discomfort is avoided, every inconvenience is treated like an emergency. Then one hard season arrives, and they panic. Why? Because they never trained for resistance. They trained for relief. That is the danger of a comfort-first life. It does not make you peaceful. It makes you weak. Chosen hardship builds unchosen strength. Say it again. Chosen hardship builds unchosen strength. That line matters because pain is coming either way. Fatigue is coming. Conflict is coming. Loss is coming. Delay is coming. Disappointment is coming. Pressure is coming. You do not get to vote on whether life will challenge you. You only get to vote on whether you will be prepared. You have a choice. You can avoid all discomfort now and become helpless later. Or you can introduce controlled discomfort now and become stable later. That's the key. This chapter is not about becoming miserable. It is not about pointless suffering. It is not about turning life into punishment. It is about inoculation. It is about teaching the nervous system, the mind, and the identity that discomfort is survivable, manageable, and often necessary. Because if you treat all discomfort like danger, you will spend your whole life retreating from the very things that could strengthen you. It's not about pain, it's about preparation. That is the correction. Weak people think the goal is to feel good all the time. Strong people understand the goal is to remain steady when feeling good is not available. That changes everything. Because once you stop worshiping comfort, you stop being controlled by it. Chosen hardship builds unchosen strength. Look at the person who always hits snooze. Not because they need recovery, but because getting up on time feels unpleasant. Day after day, they obey the softer voice. They teach themselves that discomfort gets to win. Then they wonder why they struggle with bigger forms of discipline later. Look at the person who always does the easy task first, postpones the difficult conversation, delays the important project, avoids the uncomfortable truth. They are not protecting peace. They are feeding weakness. They are rehearsing retreat. Look at the person in training who quits the moment the workout burns, or the runner who slows the second breath gets heavy, or the professional who checks out as soon as the work becomes mentally demanding. They have not yet learned how to stay present when strain appears. And that is the whole game. Practice hard so hard feels familiar. That phrase is not about becoming reckless. It is about becoming ready. The untrained mind interprets discomfort as a signal to stop. The trained mind knows discomfort is often a signal that growth has begun. That's the key. You must rewire your relationship with pain. Not injury, not abuse, not self-destruction. Pain in the sense of effort, restraint, delay, heat, pressure, resistance. The healthy forms of discomfort that come with becoming stronger. Because right now, many people treat discomfort like an enemy. They assume that if something feels hard, it must be wrong. If discipline feels restrictive, they think it is unhealthy. If growth feels inconvenient, they think they need a different path. No. Often the path is right precisely because it demands more from you. You have a choice. You can keep asking, how do I avoid discomfort? Or you can start asking, what discomfort would make me stronger? That's the key. Waking early is one example. Not because early rising is magical. It is not. But because getting up when comfort says stay down is a small act of authority. A small act of command. A small vote for discipline over impulse. You begin the day by proving that comfort is not in charge. Finishing the difficult task first is another example. That is not productivity advice. That is character training. When you attack what is hardest before your mind starts bargaining, you teach yourself that resistance does not control your behavior. Delaying gratification is another example. Waiting before you indulge. Saving money instead of spending for relief. Holding back the impulse to check the phone. Not eating the easy thing just because it is there. Not speaking the angry sentence just because it wants to come out. All of that is suffering small on purpose. And all of it builds a different kind of human being. Practice hard so hard feels familiar. Staying with discomfort in a workout matters for the same reason. Again, not recklessness. Not ego. Not injury. But staying present when the muscles burn, when the lungs work, when the body wants to negotiate. You learn something there. You learn that discomfort can rise without you collapsing. You learn that the urge to stop is not the same as the need to stop. That lesson transfers everywhere. Into business. Into parenting. Into conflict. Into grief. Into uncertainty. Into every domain where life asks you to stay steady under pressure. Do hard things calmly. That is the deeper skill. Not just doing hard things. Doing them without drama. Doing them without turning effort into a crisis. Doing them without constant complaint, self-pity, or emotional exaggeration. Because complaining multiplies pain. Calm reduces it. Panic makes difficulty feel personal. Calm makes difficulty feel workable. This is why holding composure in conflict is such powerful training. Anyone can stay controlled when they are praised. Can you stay measured when challenged? Can you keep your voice steady when someone provokes you? Can you hear criticism without instantly defending? Can you sit inside the heat of disagreement without rushing to escape, explode, or prove? That is hardship too. And it matters. Because emotional endurance is just as important as physical endurance. It's not about toughness theater, it's about emotional control. That is the correction. A lot of people want to look strong. Very few want to train strength. Real strength is boring. Repetitive. Private. It looks like taking the stairs. Holding the boundary. Finishing the set. Saving the money. Making the call. Telling the truth. Sitting in silence. Waiting your turn. Keeping the promise. None of this is glamorous. That is exactly why it works. Because the ego wants dramatic suffering. Discipline wants useful suffering. That's the key. So what should the listener do? First, choose one small daily discomfort on purpose. 1. Not 10. 1. Wake when the alarm rings. End the shower cold for 30 seconds. Take a walk without the phone. Do the hardest task before noon. Delay one craving every day. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. Finish the workout without bargaining. The point is not the activity itself. The point is the relationship you build with discomfort. Second, stop escaping the instant tension appears. This is one of the biggest weaknesses in modern life. The second boredom appears, people scroll. The second hunger appears, they snack. The second awkwardness appears, they talk too much. The second sadness appears, they numb. The second effort appears, they delay. Pause there. Do not move immediately. Let the discomfort register without obeying it. That pause is training. That pause builds command. Third, separate pain from harm. This matters. A hard conversation can feel painful and still be healthy. A disciplined budget can feel restrictive and still be wise. A hard set in training can feel intense and still be productive. Temporary discomfort is not always a threat. Sometimes it is the price of alignment. Sometimes it is the doorway to self-respect. Do hard things calmly. Fourth, stop rewarding yourself for avoidance. This is where many people sabotage their own growth. They delay a hard task, then give themselves comfort. They skip training, then indulge. They avoid the truth, then distract themselves. That teaches the brain a dangerous lesson. Run from discomfort and receive pleasure. Reverse it. Face discomfort first. Then enjoy peace with integrity. That's the key. Fifth, remember that resilience is not built in emergencies. It is revealed in emergencies. Built earlier. Built in the small rehearsals. Built when you hold the line in ordinary moments. Built when you stop treating yourself like someone too delicate for effort. You don't need their permission to become stronger. Not society's. Not your friends. Not the voice in your own head that says, "This is too much." You need a standard. You need repetition. You need chosen hardship. Because every time you suffer small on purpose, you increase your capacity for life as it is, not life as your comfort prefers it to be. Chosen hardship builds unchosen strength. Practice hard so hard feels familiar. Do hard things calmly. Let those lines settle into you. Use them when you want to quit. Use them when the task feels heavy. Use them when delay starts sounding reasonable. Use them when comfort starts speaking like a friend. Comfort is useful in its place. But when comfort becomes your ruler, weakness follows. This chapter is about changing rulers. Replacing comfort with command. Replacing avoidance with endurance. Replacing panic with steadiness. You have a choice. You can build a life that collapses the second pressure arrives. Or you can build a nervous system, a character, and a standard that has already met pressure in smaller forms and learned not to flinch. That is the quiet revolution. Not loud domination. Quiet endurance. The ability to stay steady in chosen discomfort so that unchosen discomfort does not own you. Suffer small on purpose so life cannot break you. Train yourself to meet resistance without panic, strain without drama, and effort without complaint. That is how discipline becomes resilience. That is how silence becomes strength. That is how you become the kind of person life hits but does not move. You learned how to endure discomfort. Now you must learn how to stop begging the world to validate your strength. Chapter 6. Stop seeking respect and become respectable. One of the weakest habits in the world is the need to be approved. To be liked. To be praised. To be understood by everyone. To be recognized on demand. To be validated before you trust your own path. That need makes people bend. It makes them explain too much, smile too much, tolerate too much, perform too much. It makes them betray their own standards just to keep the room comfortable. And then they wonder why nobody truly respects them. Here is the answer. Neediness destroys authority. Say it again. Neediness destroys authority. The moment you need something from everyone, you stop standing like someone who belongs to himself. You begin adjusting your language, your energy, your boundaries, your values, your decisions, all to secure emotional payment from the outside world. That payment never lasts. And the cost is always your self-respect. You have a choice. You can spend your life chasing approval. Or you can build a life that no longer depends on it. That's the key. Respect is not something you beg for. It is not something you announce. It is not something you can negotiate out of people with enough words. Respect is generated. Generated by consistency. Generated by self-control. Generated by visible standards. Generated by the quiet force of someone who does not fold every time pressure enters the room. Do not ask for respect. Become undeniable. That is the law. Weak people keep trying to manage perception. Strong people manage conduct. That distinction changes everything. The weak person asks, "How do I make them see me differently?" The strong person asks, "How do I live so clearly that confusion eventually becomes impossible?" The weak person wants credit before evidence. The strong person builds evidence until credit becomes irrelevant. The weak person chases praise. The strong person chases alignment. It's not about image, it's about integrity. That is the correction. Look at the person who sets a boundary and then immediately explains it for 20 minutes because they are terrified of being disliked. They say no, then apologize for saying no. They finally stand up for themselves, then soften it, decorate it, defend it, and dilute it until it no longer carries weight. Why? Because they do not just want to protect the boundary. They want the other person to approve of the boundary. That is neediness. And neediness destroys authority. Look at the employee who works hard but constantly fishes for recognition. Every effort is followed by a glance around the room. Every extra task becomes a subtle request to be praised. Every contribution comes with resentment if applause does not arrive. That person may be competent, but they do not feel solid, because their value is still outsourced. Look at the friend, partner, creator, leader, or parent who shapes every decision around being liked. They avoid hard truths. Avoid necessary conflict. Avoid consequences. Avoid standards that might upset people. They become agreeable in public and resentful in private. That is not kindness. That is fear with good manners. You have a choice. You can keep asking the world to confirm your worth. Or you can begin acting like your worth is measured by your conduct. That's the key. Neediness destroys authority. The reason this matters so much is simple. The need to be seen, praised, or understood will make you compromise when you should stay firm. It will make you speak when you should stay quiet. It will make you say yes when the disciplined answer is no. It will make you explain when the stronger answer is to simply hold the line. That is how people drift away from themselves. Not because they are evil, because they are hungry. Hungry for approval. Hungry for reassurance. Hungry for emotional permission. You don't need their permission. Not to be disciplined. Not to change your standards. Not to become less available to nonsense. Not to outgrow a role people preferred you in. Not to say no. Not to get serious. Not to stop entertaining people who only respected the weaker version of you. That is where power begins. The moment you understand that approval is optional but self-betrayal is expensive. Do not ask for respect. Become undeniable. So how do you become undeniable? First, stop over-explaining your boundaries. This is one of the clearest behavioral instructions in the entire chapter. State what is true. State what will happen. Then stand there. No emotional essay. No courtroom defense. No endless attempt to make the other person comfortable with your discipline. A boundary explained too much begins to sound negotiable. A boundary held calmly begins to sound real. That's the key. Second, stop begging work, family, or social circles to notice your value. Let your conduct do the talking. Show up on time. Do what you said. Stay composed under pressure. Deliver consistently. Do not gossip. Do not complain for attention. Do not dramatize your effort. Do not turn every contribution into a performance review request. The standard earns what the mouth cannot. Read that again in your mind. The standard earns what the mouth cannot. If you are always telling people how serious you are, how loyal you are, how disciplined you are, how strong you are, something is missing. Because truly disciplined people leave evidence. Not speeches. Evidence. Third, separate being liked from being respected. Many people confuse the two. Being liked often means being agreeable, easy, convenient, available, entertaining, or useful on other people's terms. Being respected often means being clear, stable, principled, and not easily manipulated. Those are not the same thing. Sometimes they overlap. Many times they do not. If you live for approval, you will choose likability over strength again and again. And every time you do, something inside you will weaken. It's not about popularity, it's about principle. That is the correction. Fourth, become emotionally expensive to provoke. This matters. Respect increases when people realize they cannot easily shake you. Not because you are cold. Not because you are arrogant. But because you are governed. Because your reactions are not for sale. Because your peace is not handed over to every opinion, slight, mood, or misunderstanding. When someone criticizes you, can you listen without collapsing? When someone doubts you, can you keep working without unraveling? When someone misunderstands you, can you resist the urge to chase them for emotional correction? That is authority. And authority is felt long before it is named. Neediness destroys authority. Fifth, stop curating appearances and start refining behavior. A lot of people want to look disciplined. Very few want to live disciplined. They want the aesthetic of strength, not the structure of strength. They want to appear confident, not become trustworthy. They want to look respected, not earn that respect through repetition, self-command, and standards. The standard earns what the mouth cannot. That means your daily conduct must become the argument. How you speak, how you wait, how you work, how you dress your environment, how you hold your word, how you react when challenged, how you behave when nobody is impressed. That is your real reputation. Not what you post, not what you claim, not what you hope people assume. Conduct. That's the key. Now here is the deeper truth. Once you become stable, disciplined, and hard to sway, one of two things happens. People respect you, or they expose themselves. That is valuable either way. Because if someone only liked you when you were soft, available, insecure, over-explaining, and easy to control, then their opinion was never a compass. It was a chain. You have a choice. You can keep polishing chains and calling it connection. Or you can become so internally ordered that false approval no longer seduces you. That's the key. Do not ask for respect. Become undeniable. Undeniable does not mean flashy. It means clear. It means your standards repeat so often that people stop doubting whether they are real. It means your no sounds like no. It means your yes means yes. It means your work gets done. It means your emotions do not lead you around by the throat. It means people can feel that you answer to something deeper than their approval. That is respectable. And the beautiful part is this. Once you stop trying to manage everyone's opinion, you recover a huge amount of energy. Energy for the mission. energy for your body, energy for your work, energy for your family, energy for silence, energy for building the life itself instead of narrating it. That is the quiet revolution. Not forcing people to respect you. Becoming so disciplined that respect becomes a side effect, not a pursuit. Neediness destroys authority. The standard earns what the mouth cannot. Do not ask for respect. Become undeniable. Use those lines. Use them when you feel the urge to explain yourself too much. Use them when you want to chase validation after doing good work. Use them when you feel misunderstood and want to beg for emotional clearance. Use them when the old need to be liked starts trying to dress itself up as kindness. You do not need their permission. You need conduct. You need steadiness. You need standards that remain intact whether people clap, criticize, approve, or leave. That is what makes a person difficult to move. That is what makes a person trustworthy. That is what makes a person respectable. Stop seeking respect and become respectable. Stop managing appearances and start mastering behavior. Let your stability speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your restraint speak. Let your standards speak. And when people either respect you or reveal they never mattered, accept both outcomes with the same calm. Because the quiet revolution is not about winning the room. It is about no longer needing the room to tell you who you are. You stopped chasing approval. Now you must build the structure that keeps your new standard alive every single day. Chapter 7. Build rituals so strong you cannot betray yourself. Motivation is unreliable. Willpower is temporary. Good intentions are cheap. That is why so many people keep failing in the same place. They depend on emotion to carry a burden that only structure can carry. They want to become disciplined, but they keep rebuilding the decision from scratch every day. Should I wake up now? Should I train today? Should I focus now? Should I eat this? Should I scroll? Should I rest? Should I push? Should I keep the promise? Too many decisions. Too much debate. Too many open doors for weakness to enter. That is why ritual matters. Ritual protects the mission. Say it again. Ritual protects the mission. Mental toughness is not sustained by hype. It is sustained by systems. By repeated behaviors that reduce negotiation. By routines that carry you when your mood is unstable, your energy is low, and your mind is looking for excuses. That's the key. The person with no ritual is forced to rely on self-control in every moment. The person with ritual uses structure to do the heavy lifting. That person does not wake up and ask, "What kind of day will this be?" They already decided. They wake. They move. They work. They eat with intention. They train. They reset. They sleep. Not because every day feels powerful. Because the system exists. And the system does not care about the mood. You have a choice. You can keep relying on motivation and keep living inconsistently. Or you can build rituals that hold your standard in place even when your emotions wobble. That's the key. Ritual protects the mission. Look at the person who says they want order, but every morning begins in chaos. Alarm. Phone. Messages. Rush. No clarity. No direction. No grounding. They enter the day already reacting. Then they wonder why the day owns them. Compare that to the person with morning order. Wake at the same time. Make the bed. Drink water. Move the body. Sit in silence. Review the plan. Begin with intention. That person has not done anything dramatic. But they have done something powerful. They have taken command before the world gets access. That is what ritual does. It protects your attention. It protects your energy. It protects your identity. Ritual protects the mission. Look at evenings too. Most people do not lose the next day in the morning. They lose it the night before. Late scrolling. Late eating. Random content. No shutdown. No reflection. No preparation. Then sleep gets weak, the morning gets late, and the whole system starts compromised. Controlled evenings are not boring. They are strategic. A disciplined night creates a disciplined morning, and a disciplined morning creates a disciplined day. That is how structure compounds. What you repeat, you become. Say it again. What you repeat, you become. This is one of the deepest truths in the whole book. Identity is not built by what you admire. It is built by what you rehearse. You do not become disciplined because you love the idea of discipline. You become disciplined because your behavior repeats in a disciplined pattern long enough that it becomes familiar, then normal, then automatic. That is why rituals matter more than intensity. Anyone can have one perfect day. Anyone can have one inspired burst. Anyone can clean up for 48 hours after hearing the right message. That is not transformation. Transformation is repetition. Transformation is structure. Transformation is doing the same strong things so often that the weak alternative starts to feel foreign. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. That is the correction. Real-world discipline always looks simple. Focused work blocks. Fixed training times. A standard bedtime. A standard wake time. Meals that support clarity instead of sabotage it. A journal that forces self-review. A shutdown routine that closes the day with intention. Boundaries around the phone. Boundaries around noise. Boundaries around who gets access to your best hours. None of this is glamorous. That is exactly why it works. Because ritual removes drama. And drama is one of the great enemies of discipline. Weak people need the day to feel meaningful before they act. Strong people make the day meaningful through structure. That's the key. Now understand the second part of this chapter. Self-betrayal usually begins with small exceptions. Not big collapses. Small exceptions. I'll skip this one morning. I'll just scroll a little longer. I'll move the workout to later. I'll eat whatever tonight. I'll journal tomorrow. I'll start again Monday. Each one sounds small. Each one sounds harmless. Each one sounds temporary. But one broken promise to yourself is never just one. It is a signal. A vote. A message. It says, my word to myself is flexible. And once that message gets repeated, trust begins to erode. Protect the ritual, protect the self. Say it again. Protect the ritual, protect the self. Because the ritual is never just the ritual. The ritual is your relationship with your own word. The ritual is proof that your standards are real. The ritual is the bridge between intention and identity. Break it carelessly, and you weaken more than the schedule. You weaken self-respect. You have a choice. You can keep treating your promises lightly, or you can start treating them like structural beams in the life you are building. That's the key. This does not mean becoming rigid in a foolish way. Life happens. Travel happens. Illness happens. Emergencies happen. But there is a difference between intelligent adjustment and emotional loopholes. Disciplined people know the difference. They do not abandon the ritual because the perfect version is unavailable. They preserve the pattern in some form. Shorter workout. Smaller session. Earlier shutdown. Simpler meal. Brief reflection instead of a long journal. The form may flex. The standard does not. That is mature discipline. It's not about perfection, it's about protection. That is the correction. Protect the ritual, protect the self. So what should the listener do? First, Build a morning ritual that creates command before consumption. No phone first. No random input first. Wake. Clean the body. Hydrate. Move. Breathe. Think. Write. Review the plan. Even if it is brief, it must be intentional. The point is to begin the day from the inside out, not the outside in. Second, assign fixed homes to important behaviors. Do not fit in your training. Give it a time. Do not try to find time for focus. Block it. Do not hope to reflect. Schedule it. The more important the behavior, the less it should depend on improvisation. Ritual protects the mission. Third, create work rituals that reduce friction. Same workspace. Same start cue. Same block length. Same shutdown. Teach the body and mind what happens here. When I sit down here, I work. When this hour begins, I focus. When this list opens, I execute. You are conditioning yourself. That's the key. Fourth, establish non-negotiable standards around sleep, food, and attention. Poor sleep weakens judgment. Chaotic food weakens stability. Scattered attention weakens identity. Do not leave these to mood. Set standards. Protect them. Repeat them. What you repeat, you become. Fifth, end the day with review. Not shame. Review. Where did I keep the standard? Where did I leak? What triggered weakness? What must change tomorrow? This is how rituals evolve. This is how awareness becomes correction. This is how self-command deepens. You don't need their permission to become structured. You do not need the world to approve your routine. You do not need people to understand why you guard your mornings, protect your nights, limit your distractions, or keep your schedule tight. You need a life that works. You need a system that keeps you aligned. You need rituals strong enough to carry you across ordinary weakness. Because ordinary weakness is where most lives get lost. Not in catastrophe. In looseness. In inconsistency. In casual self-betrayal. In all the little moments where people tell themselves, this doesn't matter. It matters. It all matters. Because what you repeat, you become. And what you tolerate, you strengthen. So stop worshiping spontaneity when your life is crying out for structure. Stop treating discipline like a mood and start building it like a machine. Wake with intention. Work with focus. Train on schedule. Eat with standards. Reflect at night. Repeat. Ritual protects the mission. Protect the ritual, protect the self. Let those lines become law in your life. Use them when laziness suggests an exception. Use them when emotion tries to negotiate. Use them when chaos starts sounding exciting again. You have a choice. You can keep living in a way that makes self-betrayal easy. Or you can build rituals so strong that weakness has fewer doors to walk through. That is the quiet revolution. Not loud promises. Silent structure. A life designed so carefully that your future stops depending on how you feel today. Build rituals so strong you cannot betray yourself. Because every repeated act of order becomes a brick in your identity, and every protected routine becomes proof that your words still mean something. That is how discipline stops being an idea and starts becoming a life. You built the structure. Now you must master the leak that ruins more lives than people admit. Careless speech. Chapter 8. Control the tongue, control the life. A weak tongue creates a weak life. That is not exaggeration. That is law. People destroy trust with their mouth. They destroy opportunities with their mouth. They destroy peace with their mouth. They destroy authority, relationships, momentum, and self-respect with words they did not need to say. Too much talking. Too much reacting. Too much explaining. Too much complaining. Too much venting. Too much gossip. Too much emotional leakage. And then they wonder why they feel drained, exposed, and unstable. Here is why. Every unnecessary word spends strength. Say it again. Every unnecessary word spends strength. Words are not free. Every word carries energy, carries intention, carries consequence. When you speak carelessly, you do not just make noise. You leak power. You reveal impulse. You expose insecurity. You waste focus. You lower your own standard. And if this becomes a habit, the mouth becomes an open gate through which discipline escapes. That is why verbal control matters so much. Because the tongue is often the first place weakness appears. You have a choice. You can keep saying whatever you feel in the moment, or you can become someone whose words are governed by principle. That's the key. Loose speech is one of the most accepted forms of self-sabotage in modern life. People call it honesty when it is really impulse. They call it venting when it is really emotional indulgence. They call it openness when it is really oversharing. They call it connection when it is really gossip. They call it self-expression when it is really lack of control. It's not about expression, it's about discipline. That is the correction. The disciplined person does not say everything they think. They do not report every irritation. They do not turn every feeling into speech. They do not hand their inner chaos to the room and call it authenticity. No. They measure. They pause. They sort. They decide whether the truth needs to be spoken, whether the timing is right, whether the tone is clean, whether the words serve anything useful. Speak less. Mean more. That is strength. Look at relationships. How many relationships get damaged not by one giant betrayal, but by careless words spoken in moments of irritation? A sarcastic jab. A cruel exaggeration. A truth delivered without discipline. A private frustration shared with the wrong person. A need to win the moment instead of protect the bond. The damage is real. Why? Because the mouth moved faster than wisdom. Look at the workplace. How many people weaken their own authority by talking too much in meetings, oversharing insecurity, criticizing others casually, complaining to the wrong people, or speaking emotionally when patience would have made them look stronger? They think being verbal gives them presence. Often it reveals a lack of control. Look at personal conflict. Someone provokes you, misunderstands you, challenges you. The weak person reacts instantly, defends, interrupts, escalates, tries to dominate through volume or speed. The disciplined person does something far more powerful. They pause. They breathe. They choose. Silence is often superior to reaction. Say it again. Silence is often superior to reaction. Because reaction feels strong in the moment but often produces weakness afterward. Regret, cleanup, misunderstanding, damaged trust, lost leverage, wasted energy. Silence preserves options. Silence creates space. Silence keeps you from becoming a servant to the emotion of the moment. That's the key. The person who cannot control the tongue usually cannot control the mind. The person who blurts, vents, rambles, gossips, and reacts verbally is often being ruled by impulse at a deeper level. That is why mastering speech is not just a communication skill. It is a self-mastery skill. Verbal self-control trains emotional self-control. When you learn not to speak every irritation, you become less ruled by irritation. When you learn not to complain every time something is hard, you become stronger in hardship. When you learn not to overshare every fear, you become more stable inside uncertainty. When you learn not to react to every provocation, you become harder to bait. Speak less. Mean more. That phrase should change the way you move through the day. Not silent in a fearful way. Not silent in a passive way. Precise. Intentional. Measured. A person of disciplined speech carries weight because people feel that their words are chosen, not spilled. When they speak, it matters. When they stay silent, it also matters. That kind of presence cannot be faked. Every unnecessary word spends strength. So what does unnecessary speech look like? Complaining is one form. Not constructive reporting. Not honest problem-solving. Complaining. The repetitive verbal rehearsal of discomfort with no movement toward solution. This weakens people more than they realize. Because every complaint trains the mind to dwell on friction instead of command. Every complaint tells the nervous system, this difficulty is bigger than me. Every complaint strengthens the identity of someone acted upon instead of someone who acts. You have a choice. You can narrate the burden. Or you can carry it. That's the key. Gossip is another form. Talking about people who are not present, not to help them, not to protect anyone, not to solve a problem, but to entertain insecurity. That habit poisons character. It makes you smaller. It makes your attention cheap. It makes your mouth unsafe. And over time, people feel that. They may laugh with you. They may nod with you. But they will not deeply trust you. Oversharing is another leak. Some people say too much too soon because silence makes them uncomfortable. They reveal private plans, raw emotions, personal details, unresolved wounds, and untested ideas to people who have not earned access. Why? Because being witnessed feels like relief. But relief is not always wisdom. You don't need their permission. You do not need immediate emotional disclosure to justify your experience. You do not need to unload every thought to feel honest. Some things need reflection before expression. Some things need maturity before language. Some things need privacy before clarity. That is discipline. Silence is often superior to reaction. Now listen carefully. Controlling the tongue does not mean becoming cold or artificial. It means your words begin serving your values instead of your impulses. It means your speech becomes aligned with the life you are trying to build. If you want peace, your speech must stop manufacturing chaos. If you want trust, your speech must become safer. If you want authority, your speech must become cleaner. If you want discipline, your speech must stop betraying your emotions every 5 minutes. It's not about silence for its own sake, it's about self-command. That is the correction. So here are the real-world instructions. First, build a pause before response. Not sometimes. Always. Especially when emotional heat is present. A breath. A beat. A moment. That small pause is where power lives. It gives you room to decide whether speaking helps, harms, clarifies, or merely releases pressure. Most people do not need better arguments. They need a stronger pause. Second, cut casual complaining. For 1 week, notice how often you verbally resist minor discomforts. Traffic, delays, weather, fatigue, annoyance, inconvenience. Stop rehearsing weakness through speech. Either solve the issue, accept the issue, or stay quiet. But do not keep feeding it with language. Third, stop speaking to impress. A great deal of unnecessary talking comes from insecurity. People exaggerate stories, offer opinions too quickly, dominate conversations, name drop, explain too much, or fill silence because they are desperate to be felt. That desperation is expensive. Need less airtime. Carry more substance. Speak less. Mean more. Fourth, stop trying to win every conflict in real time. This is where disciplined speech becomes life-changing. In arguments, do not let the mouth race ahead of the mission. Ask, what outcome matters here? Clarity, peace, truth, boundary, resolution. Then speak only in service of that. Not ego. Not revenge. Not emotional release. Fifth, Protect confidential things. Do not share what was entrusted to you just because the moment feels social. Do not expose your own unfinished process just because attention is available. Do not turn your inner life into public material before you understand it yourself. Containment is strength. Every unnecessary word spends strength. Remember that when you want to vent. Remember that when you want to gossip. Remember that when you want to explain your entire plan to people who have done nothing to build it. Remember that when someone provokes you and your mouth wants to sprint ahead of your wisdom. You have a choice. You can keep leaking energy through careless speech, or you can begin conserving power through disciplined speech. That's the key. And once you do, something changes in you. You become quieter inside. Not empty. Ordered. More watchful. Less baited. Less regretful. Less noisy. You stop making every emotion public. You stop turning every thought into dialogue. You stop giving away your state through the mouth. That is when presence gets heavier. That is when people feel your steadiness. That is when your words gain force. Because words spoken less often carry more weight. Speak less. Mean more. Silence is often superior to reaction. Every unnecessary word spends strength. Use those lines. Use them daily. Use them before hard conversations. Use them in conflict. Use them when temptation rises to complain or overshare or gossip or defend yourself too quickly. Because the mouth is not a small thing. It is a steering wheel. And if you cannot govern it, do not pretend you are governing your life. Control the tongue, control the life. Guard your words like a disciplined person guards energy, because speech is one of the fastest ways to either build authority or bleed it away. When the tongue comes under command, emotions start following. Reactions start shrinking. Regret starts decreasing. And the quiet revolution grows stronger, because now your strength is no longer leaking out through careless speech. You learn to master your words. Now you must learn to master your reactions to both failure and victory. Chapter 9. Become unmoved by setbacks, unseduced by success. Most people are too emotional to be consistent. A bad day breaks them. A good day softens them. A loss makes them doubt everything. A win makes them relax too early. That is why they keep swinging. Up and down. Hot and cold. Driven and defeated. Disciplined and distracted. They are not ruled by standards. They are ruled by outcomes. And that is a dangerous way to live. Because outcomes change. Conditions change. Results change. Applause changes. Rejection changes. But if your internal state keeps rising and falling with every result, then you are unstable where it matters most. Stay level. Stay lethal. Say it again. Stay level. Stay lethal. Mental toughness is not just about handling pain. It is also about handling progress. It is not just about surviving failure. It is about surviving success without becoming weak, arrogant, distracted, or complacent. That's the key. Weak people collapse when they lose. Weak people drift when they win. Strong people remain under command in both conditions. You have a choice. You can let results control your identity, or you can build an identity that remains stable through results. That's the key. The person who misses one target and spirals is not suffering from failure alone. They are suffering from fragile self-definition. One missed goal. One rejection. One bad week. One disappointment. And suddenly they make it mean everything. I'm not good enough. This never works. I always mess things up. Maybe I'm not built for this. That is emotional exaggeration. That is weakness speaking in the language of finality. Failure happened. That does not mean you are a failure. An event occurred. That does not mean your identity changed. Events change. Standards remain. Say it again. Events change. Standards remain. That line should become a weapon in your mind. Because setbacks are inevitable. You will miss targets. You will lose opportunities. You will be rejected. You will misjudge timing. You will say the wrong thing. You will fail to execute perfectly. You will run into resistance. That is life. The question is not whether setbacks will happen. The question is whether you will hand them authority they do not deserve. Do not worship failure. Do not worship success. Continue. That phrase matters because people become strangely obsessed with both extremes. Some people worship failure by dramatizing it, replaying it, building an identity around it, using it as proof that life is unfair or that they are cursed or that the mission is over. They turn one event into a shrine of self-pity. Others worship success. One good month. One strong season. One breakthrough. One compliment. One promotion. One visible improvement. And suddenly the edge is gone. The hunger softens. The standards loosen. They assume arrival when they have barely begun. Both are dangerous. Both knock you off course. Both are forms of emotional dependency. It's not about the event, it's about the standard. That is the correction. Look at the person who gets rejected once and disappears. Maybe it was a job, a business pitch, a sales call, a creative project, a relationship. They take the no personally, emotionally, completely. Instead of asking, what can I learn? What can I improve? What stays the same? They ask, what does this say about me? And because the question is broken, the reaction becomes broken too. Look at the athlete who misses the mark and starts doubting the entire process. One bad performance and they want a new plan, a new coach, a new identity. Why? Because they anchored confidence in outcome instead of preparation. Look at the person who starts making progress in fitness, money, discipline, or leadership and then becomes careless. They are feeling themselves now, talking more, guarding less, celebrating too early. They stop doing the quiet things that created the result because now they are entertained by the result itself. That is how success becomes sabotage. Stay level. Stay lethal. That does not mean become numb. It means become governed. It means you can feel disappointment without surrendering to it. It means you can appreciate progress without becoming intoxicated by it. It means your nervous system stops treating every result like a verdict on your worth. That's the key. Because if every loss becomes identity collapse, you will quit too soon. And if every win becomes permission to coast, you will peak too low. You need emotional steadiness at both extremes. Steadiness after setback. Steadiness after progress. Steadiness after praise. Steadiness after criticism. Steadiness after delay. Steadiness after breakthrough. This is one of the clearest signs of maturity. Events change. Standards remain. So what does this look like in practice? First, when you lose, reduce the drama and increase the analysis. This is where most people get it backward. They feel first, spiral second, and think last. Reverse it. Pause. Breathe. Look at the facts. What happened? What did I control? What did I fail to control? What needs improvement? What remains true? That process protects identity, because analysis keeps you in motion. Drama freezes you. You have a choice. You can turn setbacks into emotional theater, or you can turn setbacks into instruction. That's the key. Second, stop using temporary failure as an excuse for permanent language. Never say always from one event. Never say never from one bad season. Never build a prophecy from one disappointing outcome. That is not wisdom. That is wounded ego searching for certainty. The disciplined mind speaks carefully after failure. It says, "That did not work. That cost me. That exposed a weakness. That needs correction." That language keeps you honest without making you helpless. Third, when you win, tighten discipline instead of loosening it. This is rare. This is powerful. Most people relax after progress. The serious person sharpens after progress. Why? Because they understand that success creates a new danger, carelessness. The sale comes in. Now they get sloppy. The body improves. Now they start indulging. The work gets noticed. Now they start performing. The relationship gets better. Now they stop doing the little things that built trust. That is how people lose what they worked for. Do not worship success. Continue. Continue the morning ritual. Continue the training. Continue the schedule. Continue the humility. Continue the restraint. Continue the quiet work. That's the key. Fourth, do not make outcomes your emotional source code. This matters more than most people understand. If your peace depends on success, then success owns you. If your confidence depends on praise, then praise owns you. If your self-respect disappears after failure, then failure owns you. No. Your identity must be anchored deeper than outcomes. It must be anchored in standards. Did I keep the promise? Did I show up? Did I hold the line? Did I tell the truth? Did I stay disciplined? Did I continue? Those are stronger questions than, did I win? Because sometimes you do everything right and still lose in the short term. And sometimes you do many things wrong and still get a lucky win. Outcomes alone are not clean teachers. Standards are. Events change. Standards remain. Fifth, build a post-result ritual. After every major setback or success, do the same thing. Pause. Review. Extract the lesson. Recommit to the next action. No wallowing. No strutting. No dramatic identity swing. This ritual trains neutrality. It teaches the mind that results matter, but they do not get to hijack the mission. It teaches your nervous system that the answer after both pain and praise is the same. Return to the standard. Stay level. Stay lethal. You don't need their permission to stay steady. Not when they praise you. Not when they mock you. Not when they doubt you. Not when they suddenly believe in you after the proof arrives. The crowd is unstable. Public opinion is unstable. Results are unstable. The standard must be the stable thing. That is the correction. It's not about applause, it's about alignment. It's not about rejection, it's about resilience. It's not about the moment, it's about the mission. That is how mentally tough people move. They do not let a bad week rewrite their identity. They do not let a good month soften their discipline. They remain dangerous because they remain consistent. And consistency is born from emotional balance. Do not worship failure. Do not worship success. Continue. Use that line after every setback. Use that line after every breakthrough. Use that line when you are tempted to quit. Use that line when you are tempted to coast. Because both temptation patterns are real. Failure whispers, stop. Success whispers, relax. Discipline answers both with one word, continue. That is the quiet revolution. Not becoming emotionless. Becoming unwritable. Harder to throw off course. Harder to inflate. Harder to break. Harder to seduce away from the standard. You have a choice. You can keep living on the emotional roller coaster of outcomes. Or you can become the kind of person who respects the process so deeply that no single event gets to define you. Stay level. Stay lethal. Events change. Standards remain. Do not worship failure. Do not worship success. Continue. That is how you become unmoved by setbacks and unseduced by success. That is how you stop giving moments more power than they deserve. That is how you remain dangerous in defeat and disciplined in victory. And that is how the quiet revolution reaches its highest form, a mind so anchored in standards that results can inform it, but never own it. You learned how to stay steady in loss and victory. Now it is time to bring the entire book together into one final command. Chapter 10. Win quietly, repeatedly, and without permission. This is what winning really is. Not applause. Not attention. Not a single dramatic breakthrough. Not one emotional moment where everything changes overnight. Winning is quieter than that. Winning is slower than that. Winning is harder than that. Real winning is disciplined self-mastery practiced over time. It is the private construction of a life that no longer depends on chaos, excuses, mood, distraction, validation, or perfect conditions. It is the daily act of becoming someone you can trust in silence. That is victory. Win in private first. Say it again. Win in private first. Because if you cannot win where nobody is watching, you are not ready to win where everybody is watching. If you cannot govern your mind in the quiet, you will not govern your life in the storm. If you cannot keep your word when no one is there to praise you, then your discipline is still borrowed. That's the key. The world has trained people to think winning is visible. A title, a number, a body, a status symbol, a celebration, a crowd, a post, a reaction. But most visible success is only the echo of invisible habits. The audience sees the outcome. They do not see the mornings, the restraint, the boredom, the sacrifice, the repetition, the silence, the ordinary hard choices made again and again. That is where the real victory lives. Quiet effort, violent results. Say it again. Quiet effort, violent results. Greatness often looks boring from the outside and unstoppable from the inside. It looks like a person waking on time when no one checks. It looks like a person keeping their budget when temptation is available. It looks like a person training consistently without posting every rep. It looks like a person staying calm in conflict, not because they are weak, but because they are governed. It looks like a person doing the next right thing so many times that strength becomes their normal state. That is how real lives get built. Not by drama. By discipline. You have a choice. You can keep waiting for a moment to save you. Or you can become the kind of person who no longer needs saving. That's the key. Look at the person who becomes physically stronger. Not through a perfect 90-day explosion. Through months and years of showing up. Eating with intention. Training on schedule. Sleeping with standards. Recovering without excuses. Choosing long-term strength over short-term appetite. No big speech. No fantasy identity. Just reps. Quiet reps. Look at the person who becomes financially sharper. Not through luck alone. Through discipline. Spending less than they could. Saving before they feel like it. Saying no to status purchases. Learning patiently. Building slowly. Refusing emotional spending. Refusing financial chaos. Quiet effort, violent results. Look at the person who becomes emotionally calmer. Not because life stopped being difficult. Because they stopped being available to every trigger. They learned silence. Learned restraint. Learned to pause. Learned to hold the line. Learned not to hand the room their nervous system. That is not talent. That is trained composure. Look at the person who becomes mentally clearer. Not because the world got less noisy. Because they cut the noise. They stopped oversharing. Stopped explaining. stopped consuming everything, stopped letting random voices into sacred mental space. They built a clear mind through subtraction. All of it comes back to the same law. Win in private first. This chapter brings everything together because every chapter in this book was about one thing: becoming internally governed, killing noise, stopping announcements, acting past mood, training in solitude, choosing hardship, releasing the need for validation, building rituals, controlling the tongue, staying level through failure and success. None of that was separate. It was all preparation for this final identity. The person who wins quietly. The person who repeats strong choices until they become automatic. The person who no longer needs chaos to feel alive. The person who no longer needs approval to feel real. The person who no longer needs motivation to keep moving. That is the quiet revolution. And understand this clearly: winning is not a destination you visit once. It is a way of operating. It is a standard. It is how you wake, how you speak, how you eat, how you train, how you decide, how you endure, how you recover, how you continue. It's not about intensity, it's about identity. That is the correction. Too many people are addicted to reinvention. They want the dramatic reset, the new month speech, the fresh start fantasy, the sudden transformation that makes them feel heroic before they have built anything. No. The strongest people in the world often look unimpressive at first glance because they are not trying to look transformed. They are trying to be trustworthy. They are trying to become the kind of person whose habits can carry weight. That is harder. That is rarer. That is real. Quiet effort, violent results. Now here is the challenge of this chapter. You must stop waiting. Waiting for perfect timing. Waiting for support. Waiting for understanding. Waiting for permission. Waiting for the pain to become unbearable enough that change feels urgent. Waiting is one of the most expensive habits in the world because it disguises fear as patience. It disguises avoidance as strategy. It disguises indecision as thoughtfulness. You already know enough. You already know what needs to stop. You already know what needs to begin. You have a choice. You can keep studying discipline from a distance, or you can start living it in the next hour. That's the key. No permission. No applause. No retreat. Say it again. No permission. No applause. No retreat. You do not need anyone to fully understand your standards. You do not need people to cheer while you rebuild your life. You do not need support to keep your word. You do not need a clean runway. You do not need a better past. You do not need everyone to believe in the person you are becoming. You don't need their permission. That line should hit harder now. Because by this point, you understand that permission is often just a softer word for dependency. People wait for emotional clearance from family, from friends, from culture, from their own old identity. They want to feel fully justified before they act. But discipline does not wait for full emotional agreement. Discipline decides, then moves. No permission. No applause. No retreat. So what must the listener do now? First, stop making private promises lightly. This is where everything begins. Your life changes when your word to yourself becomes law. Not suggestion. Not mood-based intention. Law. If you say you will wake, wake. If you say you will train, train. If you say you will stop, stop. If you say you will begin, begin. Win in private first. Second, shrink the distance between decision and action. Weakness loves delay. It loves later. It loves tomorrow. It loves after this week. Strength compresses the gap. Decide. Then act in some visible form immediately. Throw away the distraction. Schedule the training. Write the first page. Set the alarm. Clean the room. Make the call. Start. That's the key. Third, stop needing the process to look exciting. This matters more than most people realize. Boredom defeats more people than pain. The routine feels ordinary. The diet feels repetitive. The schedule feels plain. The growth feels slow. Good. That is where real people separate from performers. If you can respect the boring path, you can own the result. Quiet effort, violent results. Fourth, make peace with being underestimated. In fact, use it. Let people think you are doing less than you are. Let them misunderstand the silence. Let them miss the changes while they are still small. Let your life develop underground. A seed does not need applause while it is growing roots. You have a choice. You can keep trying to be recognized during construction. Or you can finish the construction. That's the key. Fifth, remember that retreat is usually emotional before it becomes behavioral. People quit in their mind before they quit in their actions. They loosen the standard internally. They entertain excuses. They start bargaining. They let self-pity become reasonable. They make a private deal with weakness. Catch it early. Refuse the deal. No permission. No applause. No retreat. This is the posture now. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just resolved. Because winning quietly does not mean winning timidly. It means winning without depending on noise. Winning without needing to broadcast. Winning without asking whether the crowd approves. Winning by repetition. Winning by self-command. Winning by becoming the kind of person whose habits can survive boredom, pressure, solitude, and time. That is unbreakable power. And that power is available to you, but only if you stop treating discipline like inspiration and start treating it like identity. Events change. Standards remain. Mood changes. The method remains. Attention fades. The work remains. People come and go. The mission remains. That is why the quiet revolution is so powerful. It gives you something deeper than motivation. It gives you structure. It gives you inner authority. It gives you a way to live that does not collapse when life becomes inconvenient. Win in private first. Quiet effort, violent results. No permission. No applause. No retreat. Use those lines. Use them when you wake up and the old life calls your name. Use them when nobody notices your effort. Use them when progress feels slow. Use them when weakness tries to negotiate. Use them when the room misunderstands your silence. Use them when you are tempted to retreat into comfort and call it peace. You have a choice. You can return to the noisy, excuse-filled, approval-dependent version of your life. Or you can keep going. Quietly. Repeatedly. Without permission. That is the final command. Win quietly, repeatedly, and without permission. Build a life so disciplined in private that public results become inevitable. Become the kind of person who does not need a crowd to keep a promise, does not need a mood to take action, and does not need chaos to feel alive. That is victory. That is self-mastery. That is the quiet revolution completed. You have heard the call. Now all that remains is the test, whether you will leave this book inspired for a moment or disciplined for life. This is the lesson. Mental toughness is not born in public. It is built in silence. It is built when you stop announcing and start executing. It is built when you reject noise, master your tongue, hold your routine, embrace discomfort, and act without waiting for the right mood. It is built when you stop begging for respect and start living with standards so clear, so consistent, so sharp that your life itself becomes the evidence. This is the quiet revolution. Not a performance. Not a fantasy. Not a temporary burst of motivation. A private war against weakness. A daily refusal to be ruled by distraction, emotion, laziness, ego, or fear. So here is your challenge. For the next 30 days, say less, do more, complain less, endure more, explain less, build more. Go silent. Go disciplined. Go to war with the part of you that has been wasting your life. And do not come back with promises. Come back with proof.